Okay, so with the end of Reconstruction and the election of President Hayes and that deal that happened, black people's civil rights are about to take a huge hit, okay? Even though they had just passed the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment about a decade before, now those rights are going to slowly be eroded, or quickly actually, because the white Southern Democrats are in charge again. And they don't want black Southern Republicans to be in charge because that goes against, their power. So the Supreme Court did two things that really weakened the Civil Rights Amendments, 13, 14, and 15. If you remember, the trick is free citizens vote, 13, 14, 15, okay? Freedom for black people. 14th Amendment defines what a U.S. citizen is and says that that is a black person. They have equal rights under the law. And also the 15th Amendment gives voting rights to black men only, not women. So there's a court case, Supreme Court case called U.S. versus Reese. It says the state can deny black people suffrage, which means voting, on causes other than race, okay? Because of the way the 15th Amendment was written, it did not protect people for literacy or for financial status or any other reason. So just because you have the right to vote doesn't mean they couldn't take it away. So another thing that weakened it was U.S. versus Cruikshank, okay? The 14th Amendment gave black Americans rights of citizens and they could sue the state if their rights were attacked. That's what the 14th Amendment says. However, the Supreme Court says that government could not punish individual white people for violating black people's civil rights. In other words, states could not violate people's civil rights. The country could not violate people's civil rights. But the way the 14th Amendment was written, the Supreme Court decides that if a white person, an individual that is not representing the state or the national government, violates a black person's civil rights, then there's no punishment that could be levied against that person. So that's two court cases that really hurt black civil rights. Okay? All right, so multiple choice question, reasons for failure of early civil rights, okay? Even though black men got the right to vote around 1865, it doesn't really mean that the majority of black people were voting until 100 years later with the civil rights movement and Dr. King marching and all that stuff. So it literally takes 100 years for us to get this kind of right. All right, Reconstruction did not protect civil rights because of the following reasons. One, it did not provide land reform, which would provide economic independence for black people. Okay, remember, when black people first got free, they owned literally nothing, okay? Now, Abraham Lincoln and a few northern generals were pushing for a plan that basically said that they were going to take the land in the South that was owned by the slave owners and they were going to divide it up and they were going to redistribute the land to black people. Every black person was promised 40 acres of land and a mule to work it, okay? Because they never got that, because Abraham Lincoln got a bullet in the head, okay, what ends up happening to black people is that they have to go back to their former master and beg to be part of their system of sharecropping, which, as you know from earlier videos, that basically just meant that they sold themselves back into slavery. The lucky black guys at the time realized the promise and potential of the Homestead Act, and they moved out west, and those were the exodusters that we discussed in the last chapter. All right, another reason why Reconstruction didn't work is because they failed to realize the deep-rooted problem of racism, okay? Remember, de facto versus de jure. So they make all these de jure laws that say, that these anti-racist laws and black people can vote, black people are citizens. But de facto in the United States, especially in the South, by the way, it was in the North too, but especially in the South, it was prevalent. The racism was so deep that white people simply refused to hire black people in a lot of cases. Black people never got high-paying jobs because of this stuff. Not all black people, some black people did. I'm generalizing, folks, okay? Have to do that when you're teaching this much history. All right, the Solid South. Multiple choice question about the Solid South. Why'd they call it that? Well, because black people voted Republican, and because these Republican carpetbaggers came and stole everything from the rich white folks, as soon as Reconstruction ended and white people got the right to vote back in the South, they were completely anti-Republican. For 80 years, a presidential candidate was not elected by the South that was a Republican, okay? It was 80 years of solid Democrats in the South, okay? That's the nickname, that's where the nickname comes, the Solid South, because they're solidly Democratic against the Republican. Democrats dominated Southern politics with the return of suffrage, which means the right to vote, and limited black people's rights with literacy tests and poll taxes. Okay, all right. Jim Crow, again, just to review, is the legal structure that promoted de jure, which means by law, segregation in the South. Okay, now we have de jure segregation and de facto segregation. De jure means it's in the law. It says blacks and whites cannot be in the same room, that kind of thing. They can't go to the same school. They can't drink out of the same water fountain. De facto segregation is what black people and white people actually do in reality that's not in the law. So, do we still have de jure segregation in America today? Well, all that stuff was ended by court cases and laws, okay? There is no law that says you have to be segregated. The real question is, do we have de facto segregation in the United States today? Have you personally witnessed de facto segregation where people separate themselves by race without anybody telling them to do so? I do. Every time you go into the cafeteria at Church Point High, usually, okay? You usually have a group of white people all sitting together, a group of black people all sitting together, and you have some tables where things are mixed, okay? Does that make it racist when a bunch of black people want to sit together? Or a bunch of white people want to sit together? No. Nobody's telling them to do this, okay? This is just what they choose. They choose to be with their friends, okay? Now, if a white guy would sit down at a black table and they say, well, you're at the wrong table, you're not black, that's a racist thing to say, okay? And the reverse is true as well. If a black guy sat at a white table and they would try to kick him out of the table, that would be racist as well. That is de facto racism. That is de facto segregation, okay? I'm saying that kicking someone out is de facto racism because it's not supported by law. All right, Jim Crow and civil rights. By the way, y'all, this is Jim Crow, okay? Back in the 1800s, there was these plays after the Civil War. They were called minstrel plays. And they were meant to be comedies. Now, they would get this black guy to dress up all crazy, and whatever the white people in the play would say, Jim Crow would jump to it and do it, okay? So the song was Jim Crow jump, dance, Jim Crow dance. And every time they said jump, he would jump, and every time they said dance, he would dance. So the play was meant to make black people look stupid and look like a fool, and some black actors actually went along with it, but a lot of times they couldn't get a black person to play this part, or they wouldn't allow a black person to play this part, so a lot of white people would dress up in what's called blackface. So they would put shoe polish all over their face and paint their lips real big, okay? And that was how they got away with that stuff. But to be honest, y'all, this type of play really fell out of favor by the turn of the century, and people stopped going to minstrel shows, and they actually had a new kind of variety comedy show called vaudeville that came up later on. We're going to talk about that in another chapter. So Jim Crow and civil rights, okay? Let's talk about voting rights, okay? Multiple choice 11. Democrats sought to stop black voters, okay? In the 1890s, the Populist Party wanted black voters to join. Southern Democrats disenfranchised, which means they legally removed the right to vote, from these black voters to stop the Populist Party and the Republican Party from growing any stronger. How did they do this? Well, one is the literacy test. You have to read to vote. And like I said in the vocabulary video, black people usually got a harder test than a white person. Tests were usually administered by Southern Democrats, white Southern Democrats, and usually those people were Klan members, okay? So if you got a Klan member giving a black person a reading test, how do you think the black person's gonna do on the reading test, you know? So that was one way to take away from the right to vote. This is another way right here. Sometimes you would get a bunch of Klan members, let's say 20 Klan members, all dressed up with the sheets and everything, and they would be standing outside of the polling station where you would go cast your ballot. How many black people in 1870 do you think would walk through 20 Klan members to cast a ballot, knowing full well that those Klan members knew his identity and probably knew the way he was voting, because most black people voted Republicans because the Republican Party freed the slaves. Voter intimidation was real, y'all. Still is, actually. It's not as bad, though. Okay, another way they stop black people from voting is the poll tax, okay? So, a white guy comes up to vote, and of course, it's usually a white Southern Democrat or a Klansman that's taking the money, okay, the tax, the poll tax. And if a white guy comes up, the poll tax is 50 cents, okay? Black guy comes up to vote, the poll tax automatically turns into $50, which there's not many black people out there that have that much money. In fact, people are making about $1 a day. So let me ask you, would you yourself pay 50 days worth of wages just to vote for president? Most people in this country would not do that, okay? But that's another way they stop black people from voting. Well, as I mentioned in the vocabulary video before, this discriminated sometimes against poor whites and poor blacks. So since rich white people in the South were taking voting rights away from poor, illiterate blacks and whites, the poor people decided to get together and revolt and kick the rich white people out. So in Louisiana, the white people came up with an idea, okay? They were going to have the grandfather clause. So the grandfather clause creates a system where if your grandfather could vote before 1860, then you could vote whether you could pay the poll tax or pass a literacy test. And again, whose grandpa could vote before 1860? It's only white people, okay? So this immediately disqualifies any black people from being in this grandfather clause, while it gives all poor, illiterate whites back the right to vote. They get their suffrage back. All right, so across this year, well, let me go ahead and stop the video there.